Going in a way full circle, and also because of what you were saying about the pragmatic work of anti-fascism that is not necessarily called that, but that you see as probably the main and most important anti-fascist work that has been done, it seems that maybe the current situation would sort of flesh it out or bring it to the forth. And it would bring it to the force not only because fascism or neo-fascism or whatever we call it, regardless of the outcome of the fascist debate, is resurgent. I mean, a far right with its Spanish roots, as far as South America is concerned, is resurgent. And what they give us, to a certain extent, is the fact that their new boogeyman, or one of their new boogeymen, is anti-fascism. Right?
Yep.
Antifa, but anti-fascism altogether, which is interesting. So, yes, they speak about cultural Marxism and communism. Yes, of course, they speak about wokeism and all its derivatives, but anti-fascism is becoming prominent there. So, in terms of the, espousing the stigmata and returning it, it seems to be like the right moment to do that. And it seems to me that the prism of the Spanish Civil War that your book brings forth is kind of a matrix for actually doing that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, if like the return of anti-fascism is a kind of return of the repressed, right? Like the repression having occurred in the wake of the Second World War and being precisely one of the results, not accidentally, of sort of Cold War liberalism, right? Which is basically erasing the contributions of communists and socialists and anti-fascists to the work of having destroyed Hitlerism, basically, right? And so, the reclamation of anti-fascism as a kind of positioning is potentially very powerful and very promising. What it does is it sort of borrows a bit from that kind of coalitional practice of the right, which is to say, let's cohere around the enemy rather than endlessly dwell in our own divisions and fractions of, policy and this and that. And will that work? Like, could anti-fascism be once more the sort of kind of a unifying principle that ties together, if not a popular front as such, then I think in effect, right? And I think, I keep talking about Minneapolis, but I think that it is really important for understanding the potential of that, because it doesn't have to be called anti-fascism, and the people doing it don't have to say, I am an anti-fascist, to do anti-fascist work, to do obviously anti-fascist work, and to do it in ways that are unquestionably really effective. Right? Like within the kind of impoverished political landscape of US policy under Trump, it was the people's movement of the city of Minneapolis that was able to force the Trump administration to do some personnel shakeups in terms of who's running DHS, to, sort of chase ICE out of some of these communities by literally throwing their bodies upon the gears of fascist immigration enforcement. And so, I think for a lot of us that has been, on the one hand, obviously devastating in terms of the human cost to observe, but also very inspiring. And I think the challenge, certainly in the US context, which I live here, so that's the one I think about the most, is what kinds of work can be done under the current, within the confines of the current conjuncture, even if you, and perhaps especially if you happen to live in a community that has not yet been targeted for an invasive attack as Minneapolis was, or as Chicago to a somewhat lesser extent was, or as Lewiston, Maine was, right? Like, I feel like I know a lot of people who are trying to figure out, okay, what is the terrain between showing up to a No Kings rally, which have been really heavily attended by folks who I think would self-describe as centrists and liberals, right? What is the middle ground? What can I do that is useful between showing up to a rally, which obviously the current administration does not care about rallies or bad press or whatever. Like, that's not a mode of persuasion that really functions in terms of producing political change. And physically putting my body between a heavily armed, poorly trained, rank and file ICE agent and someone that they are trying to deport. What is in that middle space? And I really think that is the project right now for us, is to flesh out and create possibilities and opportunities to pull people in, to give folks places where they can put the frustration and the energy and the alienation and the rage and the heartbreak that I think so many people who live in the United States right now are feeling, and not obviously only in the United States, ways of channeling their energies. Because I think in many ways, and part of this is COVID and part of it is neoliberalism, like our associational life has been profoundly hollowed out, and we don't necessarily have places to put ourselves that are collective in ways that are, you know, that look similar to what they might have looked like in the 30s and 40s or whatever. And so, you know, how can we build in that space? That's something I think about a lot, and I don't know the answer, but I think that's the question.
It's the right question,
Yeah.
yes.